Hello Slaters! Welcome to the first video lesson for Social Studies. In this video, we will be talking about the first lesson in your textbook. To begin with, take a look at these images. Can you identify those planets? Yes, they are Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Now, Slaters, you all know that life is not possible on these planets, right? But then, can you tell me some reasons why life is possible on Earth? What makes Earth so unique and special? In today's video, we shall try and find answers to these questions because our topic for today is our Earth. But before we proceed with our topic, I want to tell you some interesting facts about the Earth. Did you know that the Earth is actually an oblate spheroid? An oblate spheroid is like a sphere, but not perfectly spherical in shape. You'd be surprised to know that the inner core of the Earth is actually hotter than the surface of the Sun. The Earth is the fifth largest of the 8 planets in the solar system, yet it is the densest planet. And Slaters, let me also add another interesting point here. Small earthquakes are always happening somewhere or the other on the Earth all the time. Now Slaters, moving further, let us understand how the Earth actually got its name. Well, Slaters, it is believed that the name Earth is 1,000 years old. And you must have also noticed that except for the Earth, all the rest of the planets in our solar system are named after Roman and Greek gods and goddesses. One of the ideas that suggests that the source of the name Earth is that Earth is an old Germanic word that really just means the ground. Indian languages have multiple meanings for the word earth. Sanskrit, for example, has terms that include bhumi, prithvi, avani, dharani, among the others that can be used for the word earth. Let me now ask you, do you know how the other planets have got their names? Reflect on this, Slaters, and we shall discuss it in the class. Dear Slaters, you're well aware that not only humans, but also millions of other animals, plants, and microorganisms live on the Earth. Humans have been trying to make the Earth a better place to live in. And in the process, we humans have entered into a conflict with the other inhabitants of the Earth and also with ourselves. We look at the Earth as a storehouse of resources which can be exploited and used at our own will. This reckless exploitation of the Earth by the humans has gradually resulted in a number of environmental crises like global warming, poisoning of the earth, the water, and the air. Slaters, don't you think it is time we humans needed to build a new understanding of the Earth? Man himself is responsible for such environmental crises. Don't you all agree upon this? All right, moving on. Now, Slaters, can any one of you tell me what is universe? Let me tell you. The limitless space of infinite dimensions is called the universe. It is the cosmic matter contained in the space. The universe comprises millions of galaxies. What is a galaxy? A galaxy is a group of millions of stars that are held together by mutual gravitational force. The spiral galaxy, which contains billions of stars including our Sun, is known as the Milky Way, also called Akash Ganga. The universe itself is said to have come into existence some 13.7 billion years ago with a Big Bang. This was a theory that was proposed by Abe George Lemaitre. The Big Bang theory is also called the expanding universe hypothesis. As per this theory, in the beginning, all matter or substances forming this universe existed at one place as a tiny ball and had an extremely small volume, infinite density, and temperature. At one point in time, this ball blasted and thus began a substantial process of expansion which continues even to this day. For thousands of years, humans have been looking at the sky and have been relentlessly trying to understand the celestial objects. What are these celestial objects? How are they related to us? Many people have studied these objects very carefully. The positions of the planets and the sun have also been discussed with the help of few theories. In the year 140 AD, Ptolemy proposed the geocentric theory. According to him, the earth was firm and stationary and all other objects went around it. In the year 1543 AD, Copernicus proposed that the earth is not in the middle of the solar system and that it actually moves around the sun. This is called the heliocentric theory, also known as the sun-centric theory. Slaters, I am sure you all must be knowing that the sun affects the climate of the earth, and we shall learn more about this in the class. Moving further, today humans are investigating and trying to understand the very distant and complex phenomenon on Moon and Mars. Now coming back to the earth, we all know that the planets move around the sun in their own orbits. Can you define an orbit? An orbit is the curved path of a celestial object or a spacecraft around a star. The Earth's orbit is nearly 965 million kilometers. Slaters, do you know that the Earth's orbit around the Sun changes shape every 100,000 years? The Earth's orbit is not a perfect circle. It is slightly oval-shaped or elliptical is the right word. So we can say that the Earth's orbit is elliptical in shape. Because of this shape of its orbit, there are points on Earth which are sometimes near the Sun and sometimes far away. Such positions are called aphelion or perihelion. Aphelion is the point of the Earth's orbit that is the farthest from the Sun, and perihelion is the point of the Earth's orbit that is nearest to the Sun. The farthest point of the Earth is about 152 kilometers from the Sun, and its closest is 147 million kilometers. Now, Slaters, let us learn about the formation of the Earth. The Earth has reached its present form through several phases. The Earth began as a ball of swirling dust and clouds and passed through a molten state. The size of this hot ball grew when it was constantly bombarded by massive rocks and other materials from the space. When the Earth was in its molten form, the heavier particles went to the bottom and formed the core, and the lighter particles cooled at the top and formed the top layer or the crust. As the Earth's interior continued to cool down, it contracted and the outer crust wrinkled, forming ridges and basins. The ridges gave rise to the mountains and the basins formed the basis for the oceans. Different kinds of gases, including the water vapor, formed the atmosphere on the Earth. The Earth is made up of 3 layers. The first one is the crust. It is the outermost part of the Earth on which we live. It is the solid part of the Earth. The thickness of the crust varies according to the oceanic and continental areas. The crust mostly consists of various kinds of rocks. This layer goes up to the depth of 100 kilometers. It forms only 1% of the Earth's volume. The second layer of the Earth is the mantle. The portion of the interior beyond the crust is called the mantle. During the formation of the Earth, when it was in its molten state, the less heavier particles settled in the middle and formed the mantle. The upper part of the mantle is pliable, meaning it is a flexible layer over which the crust floats. This layer consists mainly of chemicals called silicates. It exists at a depth from about 100 kilometers to 2,900 kilometers. It forms 16% of the Earth's volume. The third layer of the Earth is the core. While the Earth was still in its molten form, the heaviest substances settled down at the bottom and formed its core. It is composed of dense and heavy substances like iron and nickel. The core exists from the depth of 2,900 kilometers to 6,376 kilometers. It can be divided into two sublayers. The outer core from 2,900 kilometers to 5,100 kilometers and the inner core from 5,100 kilometers to 6,376 kilometers. It is the core that constitutes 83% of the Earth's volume. The inner core is in the solid state, whereas the outer core is in a liquid state. Now, how does the Earth's interior work and how does it affect the surface? What are the sources of information about the interior of the Earth? Slaters, I will discuss these points in the class. Let's move further. As you all know, there are 7 continents and 5 oceans on the Earth, right? But do you think this is how it was since the formation of the Earth? No. In fact, there are many theories which tell us how the present form of the land masses and the water bodies have formed. The most popular among them is the theory of continental drift. In 1912, Alfred Wegener proposed the theory of continental drift to describe the present arrangement of the continents and the ocean basins. According to Wegener's theory, all the continents were on a single landmass which he called a supercontinent, the Pangaea, and a mega ocean surrounded this supercontinent which he called the Panthalassa. The Pangaea is a hypothetical continent from which the present continents separated by drifting away. This began from the Mesozoic era and it continues even to the present age. Alfred Wegener hypothesized that the supercontinent of Pangaea broke up into 2 landforms, Laurentia and Gondwana. Laurentia consists the present North America, Greenland, all of Eurasia, and the north of the Indian subcontinent, whereas Gondwana consists the present South America, Africa, Madagascar, Arabia, India, Malaysia, East Indies, Australia, and the Antarctica. These 2 blocks were separated by a long, shallow inland sea called Tethys. It took millions of years for the continents to reach their present shapes and positions on the globe. Slaters, what do you think are the evidences for the theory of continental drift? Think on this. We shall discuss the details in the class. Take a look at this. Can you tell me what it is? Yes, it is called the grid. In order to accurately pinpoint the position of any place on Earth, a grid system is used. A grid system is a network of latitudes and longitudes that is drawn on a globe. The grid helps us in locating places and also helps us to learn more about them, their climate, the direction to be taken to reach a particular destination, and the time taken. Now, Slaters, look at this image. What are these lines called? You got that right. They are latitudes and longitudes. A latitude is the distance on the Earth's surface north or south of the equator. It is expressed in angular measurements from 0 degrees beginning at the equator to 90 degrees north or south. The word latitude means width. Latitudes are also called parallels. There is no latitude that is less than 0 degrees, nor any one greater than 90 degrees. Each longitude must be designated corresponding to the direction as being taken to the north or the south of the equator. The equator is the largest among all the latitudes. The imaginary horizontal circle that goes around the globe exactly in the middle at equal distance from the north and the south poles is called the equator. It is also called so because it divides the earth into two equal halves. Now, do you know, Slaters, that the equator passes through 14 countries? Here, I have a task for you all. I want you all to look up the atlas and list out all the countries through which the equator passes. The next set of lines on the globe are longitudes. The angular distance measured in degrees east or west from an imaginary line called the prime meridian that goes from the North Pole to the South Pole and that passes at Greenwich in England are called longitudes. On the globe, longitudes are shown as a series of semicircles that run from pole to pole. Such lines are also called meridians. The term meridian comes from the Latin term meridianus, meaning noon. This means all the places on a particular longitude experience noon at the same time. Thus, we can say that longitudes are related to time. In the beginning, several countries tried to fix a longitude that passes through their own territory as the 0 degree longitude. But in 1884, an international agreement between countries chose the meridian that passes through the Royal Astronomical Observatory at Greenwich near England as the 0 degree meridian. This is called the prime meridian. From this prime meridian radiate all the other meridians either eastwards or westwards up to 180 degrees. 180 degrees is also known as the anti-meridian. Now, based on the longitudes, the world is divided into 24 time zones starting from Greenwich meridian, going to the east and to the west. Coming to India, the Indian government has accepted the meridian of 82.5 degrees east for the calculation of Indian Standard Time, which is 5 hours 30 minutes ahead of Greenwich Mean Time. Now, there is something also called as the International Dateline. The International Dateline is an imaginary line located halfway around the world at roughly 180 degrees longitude. A traveler crossing the dateline from east to west loses a day because of the loss in time. While crossing the dateline from west to east, he gains a day because of the gain of time that he has encountered. I shall explain this in detail in the classroom. The International Dateline in the mid-Pacific curves from the normal 180 degree meridian at Bering Strait, Fiji, Tonga and other islands to prevent confusion of day and date in some of the islands that are cut through by this meridian. Now, why do you think is the International Dateline drawn in a zigzag manner? Well, The international dateline, as I already said, passes through the Pacific Ocean. And as you all know, it is an imaginary line like all other longitudes and of course the latitudes. The time difference on either side of this line is 24 hours. So the date changes as soon as a person crosses this line from one side to the other. Now there are some groups of islands which fall on either side of the dateline. So if the dateline was to be straight, then two regions of the same island country or group would fall under two different date zones. Thus, to avoid any confusion of date, this line is drawn through where the sea lies and not the land. Hence, the international dateline is drawn in a zigzag manner. This, Slaters, brings us to the end of the topic, our Earth. Now, it would be good if you can watch this video twice and note down all your doubts before coming to class so that we can have a detailed discussion on the same. So, I shall be waiting to see you in class, Slaters. Until then, keep learning.